All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're doing a really deep dive into the commentary on a single but incredibly powerful verse, the 37th verse of Surah Al-Aʿrāf. And we're going to be looking at it through the teachings of Ayatollah Javadi Amoli. We're going to unpack some really profound theological and philosophical arguments that are packed into this one verse. Ideas about justice, deception, and, our ultimate accountability.
Okay, so the first thing you need to know is that this verse doesn't just appear out of nowhere. To really get it, you have to understand its context. It's actually a key piece of a much larger conversation happening in the Qur'an, one that really gets going way back in verses 14 to 19 of this very same surah. That's where you get the whole story of Satan's vow to mislead humanity. So you can see verse 37 as a critical moment in that epic story of deception, divine justice, and where we all end up.
So here's how we're going to tackle this. We're going to walk through this rich commentary in a really systematic way, covering 6 key areas. We'll kick things off by figuring out what the verse means by the greatest injustice. Then we'll dive into an analysis of satanic deception, or igwa. After that, we'll look at the nature of sin, or khatiyah. From there, we'll get into some heavy-hitting theological questions and the philosophical answers provided. Then, we'll zoom out to look at the idea of cosmic order, and finally, we'll bring it all home by exploring that final confrontation at the moment of death. We're starting right at the core with this incredibly powerful rhetorical question that the verse kicks off with. And this isn't just a simple opening line. This question really frames our entire discussion. It sets the stage by defining the absolute worst thing a person can do, the greatest possible injustice. Okay, let's actually look at the text. It starts with that massive question. Who is more unjust than one who invents a lie about Allah or denies his verses? Then it immediately tells us what happens to these people. First it says, those will attain their portion from the decree. What does that mean? It means they get their share of this life, whatever is written for them. But then comes the pivot. Until when our messengers come to take their souls, they will say, where are they whom you used to invoke besides Allah? You see, the verse is like a short story, a complete narrative that takes us from the ultimate crime all the way to its final, inescapable consequence.
So what are we actually talking about when the verse says the greatest injustice, or zulm? Well, the commentary boils it down to 2 main actions. First, inventing lies about God. That could mean making things up about him or just denying fundamental truths about him. The second action is rejecting his signs, his ayat. And these aren't just verses in a book. We're talking about the signs of his power and existence that are literally all around us. According to this, doing either of these things is the absolute height of wrongdoing. Okay, so that raises a big question, right? How does someone even get to that point of committing this greatest injustice? And to answer that, the commentary takes us into this really critical concept called ihwa, which is satanic deception. But this isn't just your simple, straightforward idea of temptation. It's actually a much more nuanced process, and it comes in 2 very distinct forms. And this is where things get really interesting, because the author doesn't just say temptation. He breaks it down into 2 totally different kinds. On the one hand, you have igwat ibtidai, or initial deception. This is what we usually think of, Satan's direct attempt to mislead, whispering ideas, that external push. But on the other hand, there's a second, much deeper type, igwa mujazati, or punitive deception. This isn't the first step, it's a consequence. It's a kind of divine justice where, because a person has already chosen the wrong path and keeps walking down it, God allows Satan to have an even stronger grip on them. It's like a deception they've earned through their own choices. And this isn't just some philosophical idea they're throwing out there. It's backed up by the scripture itself. Take this verse from Surah Al-An'am. It's presented as direct evidence. And notice the specific wording here. The devils inspire their allies, their awliya'ihim. That word implies there's already a relationship there. These aren't just random people. These are people who have already sided with falsehood. And as a result, they've basically opened the door to this deeper, more intense level of satanic inspiration. And this is a really, really important clarification the commentary makes. God is not the one who starts the deception. This punitive deception is not God actively pushing someone into error. No, it's part of a natural cosmic law of cause and effect. When a person keeps choosing to do wrong, they change their own spiritual state. They create the perfect conditions to be misled even further, and God, in his perfect justice, simply allows that natural consequence to play out. You see how this all connects? This idea of persistent wrongdoing leads us right into the commentary's next big point, the nature of sin itself, what the text calls khatiyah. And the concept here is way more than just making a mistake. It's describing a state where a person's entire being, Their whole identity gets swallowed up by their wrongdoing. And the definition we get here is, well, it's pretty profound. We're not just talking about a single bad action. Khatsia is the state where the sin stops being something you do and it becomes who you are. It's like it wraps itself around you, completely envelops you, and becomes the main thing about you. It literally overshadows the pure nature you were born with. And the commentary lays out this whole progression, this sort of terrifying roadmap of how it happens. It all starts with one sin, a single act. But then comes the crucial step, persistence. The person keeps doing it with no repentance. Over time, that single act isn't just an act anymore. It grows into a general state of being. The text uses a philosophical term, malaka, which means it becomes a deep-seated trait, like a habit that's now part of your personality. And at that point, the Qur'an's description becomes chillingly literal. Ahatat bihi khati'atuhu. His sin has completely encompassed him. The person is basically a prisoner, trapped and surrounded by their own choices. Okay, so with all that foundational stuff laid out, the nature of injustice, deception, and sin, the commentary then switches gears. It's almost like it turns into a rigorous philosophical Q&A session. It anticipates some of the toughest theological questions that naturally pop up from this discussion and then provides these really methodical, reasoned answers. First up is a real brain twister, a classic philosophical problem. The question goes like this: if evil or sin is just the absence of good, if it's a form of non-existence, then how can it have a cause? I mean, you can't cause nothingness, right? So how can we blame Satan for causing sin if sin isn't even a real thing? And the answer here is super sharp, very nuanced. The commentary says, look, we have to distinguish between two kinds of non-existence. There's pure, absolute nothingness, and then there's relative non-existence. A sin, it argues, is not pure nothingness. It's a wrongful act. And an act, by definition, exists. It happens in the real world. It has a cause. It has an effect. It's only non-existent in the sense that it's missing a connection to divine good. But because it's a real action, it can absolutely have a source, like the deceptive influence of Satan on a person's choice. All right, next question. This is one that comes up all the time, the whole free will versus predestination thing. If God knows everything and is in control of everything, what do we do with verses like this one, which says, God guided one group, but for another group, error was justified? I mean, doesn't that sound like God is choosing who gets guided and who doesn't, taking away our own responsibility? And the answer circles right back to what we've been talking about. It's totally consistent. Divine guidance or misguidance isn't just random, it's not arbitrary. It's a reaction, a consequence of our own choices. Guidance is a gift that's given to people who, using their own free will, actually seek it out and make themselves ready for it. And on the flip side, error becomes justified, haqqa alayhimu el-dalala, for those who freely choose to reject the truth. God's action is always a perfectly just response to the direction we choose for ourselves.
So all of this, cause and effect, choice and consequence, it all fits into a much bigger picture, a cosmic framework that the commentary lays out for us. It's a vision of how the entire universe is run through two interconnected divine actions, tanzil, which is decree, and tadbir, which is management. And this is a really cool concept. Tanzil is like the divine blueprint for all of reality, the source code. It's the sending down of all the fixed laws and principles that govern everything, from physical laws like gravity to the spiritual laws of right and wrong. Then you have tadzbir. That's the active, moment-by-moment management of the universe, according to that blueprint. It's God's hands-on governance, making sure everything runs the way it's supposed to. So you've got the plan, and you've got the real-time execution of that plan. They work together perfectly. Now think about the implication here. It's huge. The argument is that there's this one, single, perfectly just system running the entire universe. Absolutely nothing is random. And that means the consequences of our choices, whether we receive guidance or get trapped by our own sins, aren't just arbitrary punishments or rewards. They're a built-in feature of how the universe works, flowing from the very same divine laws of Tanzil and Tadbir that keep the planets in orbit. And that perfect system, that unified order, brings us right back to where we started, to the end of the verse. It brings us to the final, unavoidable showdown. After looking at the crime, the deception, and the cosmic laws, the commentary now zooms in on that final scene, the confrontation at the moment of death for those who chose the greatest injustice.
The text walks us through this scene step by step, and it's incredibly dramatic. First, the unjust person gets to live their life. The verse even says they receive their decreed portion, their nasibuhum min al-kitab. But that's all temporary, because then, at the exact right moment, the messengers, the angels of death, arrive, and they're not there to chat. They're there to carry out an order, and they ask this one devastating question that just shatters a lifetime of denial. Where are those you used to call upon besides Allah? In that instant, every illusion is gone. They see the truth, they admit their idols are useless, and they are forced to do the one thing they spent their entire lives avoiding. They testify against their own selves.
And that last part of the verse, it's just chilling. It captures their final words. They have departed from us. It's a confession of total failure, of being completely abandoned and powerless. And then the final verdict, delivered by their own tongue, and will bear witness against themselves that they were disbelievers. It's that moment of absolute, undeniable clarity, the kind of clarity that only arrives when it's way, way too late to change anything. So what does this all leave us with? After going through this whole intricate framework, we're left with this one powerful idea. If the universe truly is a flawless system of cause and effect, where every action has a perfectly just consequence, all governed by a single divine order, well, then that puts the full, unshakable weight of responsibility for our own destiny right where it belongs, squarely on our own choices.